You know, I contemplated having the Transformers jingle at the beginning of this video, but I realized that would probably be a bad idea for copyright reasons, and I want this video to be in good standing when we finally get monetized. But anywho, how's it going, guys? Today we're going to be talking about FLAMEWAR, the Brash Veteran. Now, FLAMEWAR is one of the Transformer cards from the Brothers War set, and this idea came from two areas actually around the same time. One was from King Sableye in my comment section saying, I enjoy the story parts in the beginning and enjoy the deck text that you built. I just built another commander deck under 15, one being Anji, Maid of Dishonor. But I wanted to see you make a FLAMEWAR Brash Veteran deck. Hope to see you keep brewing, and thank you for the building restrictions. Now, ironically, it was very, very shortly after I got this comment that I had a game with a friend of mine who used to work up at the local card shop who was also playing a FLAMEWAR deck. So good timing, playing against them and also seeing this comment gave me enough of a reason to get this deck started and built. So let's go ahead and take a look at FLAMEWAR and see what they are doing for us. So FLAMEWAR is a transformer, meaning that we can pay 3 to summon them normally, or we can use the more than meets the eye clause to pay 2 and flip them onto their backside when they come out instead. FLAMEWAR says you can sack an artifact, put a 1/1 counter on it, and then convert it at sorcery speed. And we can pay 1 mana to discard our hand and put any card we have exiled with intel counters on them into our hand. So 9 times out of 10, we're going to be playing FLAMEWAR on turn 2, and let's see what that transform side does. It's got Menace and Death Touch, and anytime it deals combat damage to a player, we can exile that many cards on the top of our library and throw them face down and put an intel counter on each of them. And then it will automatically convert FLAMEWAR back into the robot form from the motorcycle form. So we're going to be wheeling our hand a lot with this deck. So we don't need a ton of draw cards in the main board, as our commander is our draw engine, but we still have to have some. But what are we going to be doing here? Well, this is a commander that wants us to get in. This is a commander that wants us to attack people a lot. So we're going to go for kind of a Voltron strategy. Now, if you remember the Transformers Armada TV show, there were these little robots called mini-cons that came from Cybertron and provided a major power boost to each of the Transformers, and a few of them even were used to assemble a sword. So I figured that in keeping with the theme of Transformers, we would go for a semi-Voltron strategy while also going for an artifact upping strategy. Mostly in treasures, but you'll see what I mean when we talk about it. So let's go ahead and first talk about the ramp package in the deck before we get into anything else. We have, of course, our baby, the Scampering Surveyor. 4 mana, gets a basic land from your deck or a cave, puts it onto the battlefield, and then you shuffle. Unstable Obelisk, a 3 mana artifact that gets us a colorless mana, and also can be sacked to blow up any permanent if we have the 7 mana for it, which we probably will if we have the treasures, but we don't want to do that too often. Then we have the Charcoal and Fire Diamonds. These are the diamonds in our respective colors for 2 mana. Note, all the ramp we have in this deck, we really kind of want it to be 2 and 3 mana if we can help it, because those are the turns before we're going to be casting our commander sometimes. But it's going to be kind of hard to do that with this commander, because it's going to cost 2 half the time that we play it. So realistically, you just want this to ramp up to other cards that the deck is going to be going for. Another 2 mana rock we have is Mind Stone. We can sack it to draw a card if we need to. 1 mana at Wayfarer's Bauble. Sack it to get any basic land from our deck onto the battlefield. Liquid Metal Torque, we can use this to turn anything into an artifact, which is going to be important later. And also we can get colorless mana with it. Then we have Command Sphere. It can also blow up to draw us a card if we need it to. And Solemn Simulacrum gets us a basic land, and if it dies, we get to draw a card. So that is our ramp. I said we were going to have a very, very mini draw package. So let's go over that real quick before we go too terribly further into what the deck strategy is. Our draw package is only 5 cards deep. It is the Mephitic Drought. It does a damage to us when it comes into the battlefield, and then we draw a card. It also does that whenever it is destroyed as well. So if we sack it any of our cards, then we will get a draw from it. Ichor Wellspring, same thing. It draws us when it ETBs and when it dies. Quicksmith Genius, anytime an artifact ETBs, we can discard a card and draw a card. Costly Plunder, we can sack an artifact to draw 2 cards. And then Containment Construct, anytime we discard a card, which our commander will make happen a lot, we may exile any card card from that discard pile to our graveyard, exile it, and then we can play that card. So if we have a card we really want, and we have to throw it away with FLAMEWAR because of the sequencing of our cards, then that's fine. Containment Construct will say, hey, until the end of the turn, you actually get to play one of those cards still, so you don't actually have to suffer from that. That also works with Quicksmith Genius, as we are discarding cards for Quicksmith Genius. If we have Containment Construct on the board as well, we're actually just generating advantage that way. But let's go ahead and get into the last generic package the deck has before we get into the meat. We have a very small, for the type of deck that we are running, a very small removal package. It's not as much as I would prefer, but the deck is doing a lot of combat stuff, so we actually, when we're running Voltron, it's harder to run more and more removal because, well, a lot of our deck is having to be dedicated to other things. It's why one of our removal spells is actually in our mana base. We have Meteor Golem, of course, it's an artifact-centered deck, so it's here. Blow up any non-land permanent. Unlicensed Disintegration, blow up a creature. If you have an artifact, deal 3 damage to the controller. A Braid can deal 3 damage to a creature or blow up an artifact, which works well with our Liquid Metal Torque. Aftershock can blow up an artifact, creature, or a land, and then it deals 3 damage to you. Now note, blowing up a land is very important. Glacial Chasm is a card in Magic the Gathering, and you want to be able to get rid of that ASAP. Maze's End is also a card in Magic the Gathering. Please get rid of those when they're on the board. Feed the Swarm, blow up any target creature or enchantment, and then Dalek Drone, blow up any creature, and then that player will lose 3 life. Now, we don't have the most robust package of destruction in here, so we are going to try to close games out quickly, because if things get out of hand, then we will get swarmed up. So how are we going to make sure that that happens? Well, we're going to do it one of 2 ways. We're either going to get our commander massive, or we are going to get a bunch of tokens on the board and blow people up that way. So I mentioned the mini cons. Let's go ahead and get into some of those mini cons the deck is running. We have 8 to start out with. They are Gilded Pinions. When it enters the battlefield, make a treasure. We can also give our commander flying that way. Cloak of the Bat will give our commander flying and haste. Cliffhaven Kitesail will give our commander flying. And then we have Mirror Shield to give our commander hexproof, because we are basically a Voltron-style deck, so we do need ways to protect the commander. Then we have Tenza Ghetto's Maul. It'll give our commander 3/3 and trample, because it is a legendary creature. And then we have the Two-Handed Axe. We can use it on the adventure side to give our commander double strike for a turn, but when the equipped creature attacks, we can double its power until end of turn. That's way more important. So with this commander, you don't want double strike most of the time. You want to double its power, because when it hits somebody, you get only the combat damage that you dealt to the player as cards to play with its effect. So if you are using, if you're hitting with double strike, the first hit will hit, and then you, if memory serves, you will only be able to get that first hit of damage before it flips over to the other side. So again, 9 times out of 10, you actually just want to do the double power. And then we have 2 ways to swing huge with the commander. We're generating a lot of tokens. We're generating a ton of artifacts on the board. So we have Cranial Plating to give our commander 1/0 for every artifact we control, and Nettle Cyst to give our commander 1/1 for every artifact and enchantment we control. So all the treasures we are generating, all the tokens we are generating will be, all the equipment that we're playing, it all feeds in to Nettle Cyst. Now, I mentioned a lot of tokens, and I mentioned treasures. So let's go ahead and talk about our second set. Some of these are also mini cons for our deck. These are the treasure generators. There's 8 of these. Undercity Scrounger. If a creature died this turn, we can create a treasure token. More on that later. Gold Vein Pick. Equipped creature gets 1/1. When it deals combat damage, make a treasure. Guild Artisan. Whenever our creature attacks a player with more life than any other opponent, we make 2 treasures. Beamtown Beatstick. When our commander deals combat damage to a player, make a treasure. Diamond Pickaxe. When our creature attacks, make a treasure. Prying Blade. When our creature deals combat damage to a person, make a treasure. We're equipping our commander with pickaxes and crowbars and all kinds of things. Then we have Strike It Rich, make a treasure, and it has flashback to make a treasure again. and Collector's Vault, which will let us draw a card and discard a card to make a treasure. And remember, our discarded cards are actually just suggestions if we happen to have the containment construct on the board. So we are generating lots and lots of treasure tokens this way. And remember, treasures are artifacts, so Cranial Plating and Nettle Cyst will see all of those in giving our commander lots and lots of damage. But that's not the only way we are going to be trying to win the game. Now, treasure tokens also have to be sacrificed to get maximum use out of them. So if we're not stockpiling treasures, we are generating them for the purpose of sacking them. Let's go ahead and talk about what that means for our deck. This is our win con package, and I need to go ahead and tell you that we are going to have a bit of an aristocrats feel with this deck. So we have the Dowsing Device. Artifact, whenever another artifact enters the battlefield, up to one of our creatures gets 1/0 and gains haste until end of turn, so we can use this to make our commander hasty. But most importantly, if we control 4 or more artifacts, it will auto-flip to the Geode Grotto. We can make one of our creatures gain haste and XO, where X is the number of artifacts we control. That's right, we get Cranial Plating on a land, everybody! This flips into Cranial Plating on a land. This is super hard for somebody to remove from our battlefield, and 9 times out of 10, nobody's going to know what the hell the card does when we play it anyway. So people are familiar with Cranial Plating. People are familiar with our Nettle Cyst. This is one we can actually sneak in on people. Most people aren't going to be like, oh yeah, no, you played this card. The Dowsing Device is a win con. No, it's a win con for us. It's a super strong win con. Then we have Nadir's Nightblade. Anytime a token we have leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses a life and we gain a life. Mirkwood Bats. When we make a token or lose a token, each opponent loses 1 life. Agent of the Iron Throne. Anytime one of our artifacts goes into the graveyard or a creature goes to the graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. Reckless Fireweaver. Whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under our control, it deals 1 damage to every opponent. And then Mayhem Devil. Every time any player sacrifices a permanent, deal 1 damage to any target. Use this to completely dismantle the player who is playing Aristocrats as well, or also use this so that all your treasures turn into sniper bullets. This is one of the reasons why we don't have as robust of a removal package, because some of the stuff we have, like Mayhem Devil, can actually just destroy things our opponents have been playing with its own ability. So, I mentioned sacrificing stuff. What other stuff are we going to be sacrificing? What other tokens are we going to be sacrificing? Well, we have a 4-card token generation package. One of them is Myr Battlesphere. When it ETBs, make 4 Myr tokens, and when it swings, burn somebody for the amount of Myr tokens we are able to tap with it. Loyal Apprentice. At the beginning of combat on your turn, make a 1/1 colorless Thopter token that gains haste. Sly Requisitioner. Anytime one of our non-token artifacts is sent to the graveyard, make a Servo token. And Farid will also say when a non-token artifact is put into the graveyard, make a colorless artifact token named Scrap. So as we sacrifice our artifacts, we are going to be generating even more tokens with these. We also can use this to put a 1/1 counter on it so we can swing if we need to. It sacks an artifact to put a 1/1 counter on it to go to creature or to discard a card and draw a card. 9 times out of 10, this is just going to sit here and generate us lots and lots of advantage. But I mentioned sacrificing. So how are we going to be sacrificing our creatures? Well, this is our sack outlet section. It is 7 cards deep. And let's start with the completed Hunt Master. Pay 1 and tap it to sack a creature and incubate. So we're going to sack a token or any creature on our board, basically, or artifact on our board, and then we're going to make another artifact, because when you incubate, you're creating an incubator token that has 3 1/1 counters, and it is an artifact on the board itself. So we're sacking artifacts to make artifacts. Street Urchin, we can sack any creature or artifact to deal 1 damage to any target. Again, remember, these are our other ways of controlling the board over and above the basic removal package we have. Lobelia, we can sack an artifact to make Obelia do things, which isn't super important to us. Sack an artifact, play a card, exile with Lobelia without paying its mana cost, because when it ETBs, look at the top card of each opponent's library and exile them face down. 9 times out of 10, though, we're just going to use it to make each opponent lose 2 life and then force us to gain 2 life. This is a secondary aristocrat for the deck. Then Onicote Anvil. Anytime one of our artifacts leaves the battlefield during our turn, make a colorless construct artifact creature token. Note, it does not say non-token artifact, so this procs off of itself, basically, but it only triggers once per turn. We can sack an artifact to deal 1 damage to every opponent and gain a life. Another secondary wrist scrap for us. Dockside Chef can sack an artifact to draw a card. Trading Post can let us either discard a card to gain 4 life, make a white goat creature token by paying a life, sack a creature to get an artifact from our graveyard back to our hand, or sack an artifact to draw a card. So just a all-around great package on Trading Post. And then Chronomancer, sack an artifact to draw a card. It also has Unearth in case it dies. So we're sacking a lot of things. Are we just sacking tokens on the board, or are we going to sack things that actually give us advantage? Well, this is where we have the literally named Sack for Advantage section. We have Circuit Mender and Filgree Familiar, both of them ETB to gain us life, and then when they die, they draw us a card. Then the Nimblewright Schematic and Servo Schematic make colorless Servo and colorless Construct tokens when they ETB and die respectively, and Mycosynth Wellspring gets us lands when it ETBs and when it dies respectively. So each of these cares about when it comes onto the battlefield, it cares about when it dies. But if we're killing all of our cards off, how are we going to get them back? How are we going to make sure that as we are killing things off so our commander gets bigger, healthier, and healthier, that we still have the ability to gain advantage on our opponents? That's where our recursion and reanimation section comes in. Let's start with the Workshop Assistant. If it dies, put any artifact from our graveyard to our hand. Scrap Welder, sack an artifact to get an artifact with mana value less than the one we sacked, and then it gains haste. Altar of Ball, exile any of our tokens to get a creature back from the graveyard. It's also an artifact as well. So this is one of my favorite types of recurring reanimation in Magic the Gathering. Please play Altar of Ball more, people. That of Rebirth, whenever an artifact or creature is put into the graveyard, put an oil counter on it, remove 4 oil counters to return a creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield. So we can use this to make sure that things like the Meteor Golem can be replayed over and over again to blow up cards. This is super helpful. Scrap Trawler, whenever Scrap Trawler or another artifact is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return an artifact in the graveyard that has lesser mana value to your hand. So when we blow up our bigger artifact cards, the Scrap Trawler is going to be here to make sure that we get advantage off of those. And then we have Ayara, Widower of the Realm. Her primary ability for 3 mana, she can tap herself, is sack another creature or artifact to deal X damage to target opponent, and then you gain X life, where X is the permanent's mana value. So sack a Meteor Golem for 7 damage, sack Altar of Ball for 2 damage, you get the idea. But if we pay 5 mana and then 2 life to flip her, she gets even better. At the beginning of combat on your turn, return any artifact or creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield and it gains haste. We exile it at the beginning of the next end step, but note, she only exiles them if we didn't kill them. So we bring any of our artifacts or creatures back to the battlefield, and then we sack them with any of these cards here, and we will be able to reuse them over and over again. So Ayara sits on the board like this, and she goes, hey, I want to get back, I know I keep saying the card's name, but she wants to get back Meteor Golem, because it's funny to get back Meteor Golem a billion times. Make people regret saying Meteor Golem is a bad card. That is my thing for 2024. Make people regret saying Meteor Golem bad. She gets Meteor Golem back onto the board, and then you just sack Meteor Golem into something like the Oni Cult Anvil, and then, or even worse, sack it into something like the Scrap Welder, and then just get tons of advantage off of that. She gets a card out, sack it with Scrap Welder. Scrap Welder gets another smaller card onto the battlefield because of that, and redo this over and over and over and over again, all the while generating extra tokens for us so that our commander can swing bigly. And remember, every time we sack things, we are burning people, if they are tokens, if they are artifacts, because that is what our sack outlet section, or our not sack outlet section, our win con section is doing for us. And now the deck needs to have a little bit of mana fixing because it is a dual colored deck. So we do have 6 fetching lands: Evolving Wilds, Terramorphic Expanse, do it for free. Promising Veins, Shire Terrace, Grixis Panorama, and Myriad Landscape cost 1 and 2 respectively, and get us lands out of the battlefield. Myriad Landscape also makes sure that lands come into play, more lands than what you sink into it come into play. So gets lands out of the deck, onto the battlefield, and also ramps if it's Myriad Landscape. Then we have Smoldering Marsh, comes into the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more basics. We have a lot of basics because we're a budget deck, so it's a good card. Shadowboard Blood Ridge, it's a filter land. Command Tower, it's an Omni land. Foreboding Ruins, show them one of our basic lands, or it comes into play tapped. And then, of course, we have 12 and 13 basic lands in each category, Mountain and Swamp, as we are a Rakdos deck. So Basically, with Flame War, we are going to be ramming it into opponents every single turn in an attempt to make sure that we are digging through our decks, getting our aristocrat and win con pieces on the battlefield one by one. We want to get that cranial plating out. We want to get that nettle cyst out. We want to get that agent of the Iron Throne out so that we are incrementally burning people. And then the people we can't incrementally burn, like the life gain players, the other aristocrat players, then we're just going to hit them with the commander for commander damage so that they take essentially 21 infect and then die that way. And we will be making sure that our commander gets in with things like flying, so that things like trample, so our commander is always dealing damage, generating treasures, generating artifacts, getting bigger, feeding into the cranial platings and the nettle cests, generating enough tokens to feed into the agent of the Iron Thrones and the Mirkwood bats. And we are going to be recycling our cards over and over again, playing things like Myr Battlesphere with things like Ayara, and then sacking them to things like Scrap Welder to generate a crap ton of tokens every time we do, and then get more creatures every single time with that. We are generating lots of tokens, we are hitting for lots of damage, and we are drawing lots and lots of cards. And hopefully that's enough for y'all to think that subscribing is a good idea. We even got the deck built for, as per usual, $15. We built the commander itself is 39 cents, so that's under $1, and the 99 of the deck clocks in at $14.79, well under the $15 threshold. So I hope you guys enjoyed. That was Flame War, the Brash Veteran, and for that friend of mine that I played with the other day who was playing Flame War, hopefully this gives you some ideas on angles you can take your deck as well. But with that said, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you haven't already, and as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here. Hey, I just quickly want to give a thank you to all of my wonderful patrons who keep this show running. YouTube and Twitch are a pretty bumpy ride at the best of times, and the stability a Patreon provides me is worth more than I can say here. I'd also like to thank each and every one of my $20 and up patrons here, and they would be Red Joker, Blitzkrieg, Cameron, Dren, Jemshin, Smiling DM, Poundini, Mabbity Babbity, Naomi, Isaac, Agamotto, Jordan, Ravi, Giuni, Kiratorian, Prisma, all of you, I'm not saying that part, and Starlight. And finally, thank you to everyone else that helps keep this channel alive. While you're here, why not check out another video? And thank you for watching.